no big deal. It just changes the course of humanity. It does. If you are a student and you're listening to this and because it's so hard to be a student, right? You're going through grad school. It's a terminal degree. It ain't easy. Boards aren't easy. Curriculum's not easy. All those things are not easy if you don't have a deep reverence for the why behind what we do. And all of that, especially today, is deeply immersed in vitalistic chiropractic. It can't, there is no other answer for the future of humanity.
Well, welcome everybody. Dr. Ron Oberstein, President of Life Chiropractic College West, and welcome to another edition of our Life by Life West web and video and podcast. So today, joining us, first of all, I've got my my partner in life and health and everything else in my world, my universe, my partner in universe, Dr. Mary Oberstein. Mary, welcome.
Hi.
Great to see you. And our guest today is coming from our hometown, or the adopted hometown for Mary and I, in San Diego, California, Dr. Stan Hom. Hi, Stan. How you doing, man?
Hey, Ron. How are you?
Great. Doing wonderful. It's great. I'm always wonderful when I see you, brother.
Same here, man. I miss being neighbors.
I know. What was it? We were during that Armageddon, I don't know what it was called. We don't want to bring the name up, but we were standing in line together, weren't we? Yep. You walked into a shop when I was happened to just ironically be in San Diego, and you could only get takeout food, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, we ran into each other. It was so great. I think we're the only ones who would hug each other,
I know, right? We were just normal, and that's
or I don't know if we're ever normal. That's a compliment, or maybe it's not. I don't know.
Who knew that chiropractic would be, viewed, and obviously we're the blackest of the black sheep, but at the same time, yeah, we were the only ones just being normal out of all the people there. Crazy.
6 feet. What's that, man? I got two hands.
Yep.
But anyways, let me just give our audience a little bit of glimpse about you, Dr. Stan. Mm-hmm. Dr. Stan's a 2010 graduated from Southern California University of Health Sciences, or LACC. Immediately came down to San Diego. Did an associateship for a few years, and then opened his own practice in 2012, where he's been ever since, called Future Generations. And he's a diplomat in pediatrics from the ICPA, International Chiropractic Pediatric Association. Also has a CCWP, Certified Chiropractic Wellness, from where? From Canada, through the ICA, and it's from James Chestnut. He's all about, whole family practice, prenatal, pediatrics, just doing some really amazing stuff. And, we'll jump into that. But it's just great to have you, man. And you have your own podcast.
Yes, I do.
I love it.
3 years running.
How long?
3 years.
Awesome. Yeah. Tune into his podcast, and we'll scroll on the bottom. It's Future Generations, obviously. That's the sign behind you, right?
That's right.
So just great stuff. So, Mary, how about I ask the first question? I think just to introduce Stan, how'd you get into chiropractic? What was your road?
I got into chiropractic post-military. I moved to San Diego in 2005 as I was getting out of the Army. And my story is that, I had the cleanest bill of health from all the medical doctors in the military. I was as fit as could be. I could do anything I put my mind to. And then I moved to San Diego, and my brother, who is a chiropractor, became his roommate. He was in his third year of practice, and he almost looked at me through a completely different lens. And he asked me literally, are you okay? And basically told me that I had to come into his office. And I didn't know at the time, but now, fast forward 17 years, at this stage, I'm actually a disabled veteran, because of all the chronic problems that I had. So we've had 3 years of talking about, or not talking about, comorbidities and things like that. And from PTSD to chronic gut issues, chronic inflammatory issues, chronic stress and pain. Those are things that the medical doctors didn't see, and my brother could see and feel, and his innate to my innate, and That was the start of my transformation. It took me about 6 months.
You got a clean bill of health, huh?
Got a completely clean bill of health.
This is on discharge, right? This is when you left the military.
And admittedly, I was, I had both feet out the door. I was trying my best to get out as fast as possible. So I probably checked a few blocks, but they definitely could not see things that my brother could see immediately, ways that my system was not optimal and was not expressing its fullest potential. So,
I had no idea. And did you serve? Like, were you in combat duty and did you have combat at all, or?
Yeah. I went to Iraq 2003. We were part of the initial push. We were supposed to come through Turkey. Our unit was, but obviously Turkey didn't let us come through their country. So we were 2 weeks behind the initial ground force that came through Kuwait. And, previous to that, I had been stationed at Fort Hood, Texas for my entire career. And previous to that, I was a West Point grad. So I kind of have a unique history into this journey of chiropractic. And like 6 weeks into care, I'm dating myself to all the listeners, right? And you hit that reset button to the Nintendo, and I felt like my whole system started over 6 weeks after getting adjusted. And in 6 months, my brother basically, clinically verbalized to me that I was one of his healthiest patients, and so that's fueled my journey ever since. Specifically, the thing that I didn't realize happened that did happen because I was preparing to go to chiropractic school was my entire journey of school, like literally since I was a kid. I felt like I was dyslexic. I felt like I had reading and learning issues. I definitely was like a C student in English. And very interestingly, my English teachers would be like, oh, it's because English is your second language. And I said, English is my only language. So I didn't have that excuse per se, but when I was preparing for chiropractic school, and this is like now maybe a year of getting adjusted and a year of deep lifestyle transformation, I went to do my prereqs, and the teacher was like, you're one of the best writers that I ever, taught. And I was like, say that again? Because everybody in the history has thought I was partially illiterate, Right. And that kind of shifted my mind because things that I had been dealing with since I was a child were unwinding, as a result of having a healthier and more optimal nervous system. And that fueled my entire journey from, my whole chiropractic education was focused on obviously the peds and prenatal and the family practice, but also the CARIC and the functional neurology and the kind of deep understanding of how the nervous system can actually transform. So
cool, man. Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks for your service. Number one,
thank you.
Because that's an important thing, and you gave your time, you gave your talent, and
your health,
and your life. You were willing to, and that's a huge thing. So number one, thanks for that commitment. And wow, I never knew that story. So
I didn't either.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question. So was there a time, so you started getting adjusted by your brother? Was there one moment where you said, I'm going to be a chiropractor? And what was it, early on or was it later on? It
was in 2003, 2 years before I got my first adjustment. I was in Iraq, and he sent me $3 because he knew that I was going to be on a new path. And one was Dr. Mercola, his Total Health book is one of his first books on nutrition. The other was a book on acupuncture, and it was titled The Web That Has No Weaver. And then another one was about chiropractic. And it wasn't a green book. I've since, I could shift my camera and show you my library of all the green books that I have, but it was about innate. It was about how the body was made to heal. And it was those moments where those seeds were planted. And then once I started getting adjusted, it was almost instantaneous that that was going to be my path forward.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And so is your brother still practicing?
Yes. Yep.
In LA or where is he?
No, he's in Encinitas. Yep.
I had no idea, man. I had
never either.
It's because chiropractic in San Diego, man. There's 1,700 chiropractors.
When did you graduate?
2003, LACC. Also, he told me to go to Life West. I didn't listen.
Well, you're the younger brother, right? I was the third of three, and I never listened. It was our job to not listen, right? That's incredible. Wow, that is.
What a great story. I never heard that
Thank
either.
you.
So let's jump forward now. So now,
Yeah.
so you went through school, and then you got out, you associated, and then you decided, okay, I'm opening my own practice. I kind of want you to talk more about like the ped prenatal aspect of it. Like, did you know right then what kind of practice you wanted to have? And
Yeah, I did. I was done with the ICPA curriculum before I graduated school.
Okay.
And I was already board eligible at the Carrick Institute. I'm still board eligible, and I'm not going to take the tests, especially not 14 years in practice. But I knew immediately in school that I was going to take care of kids. I knew that was going to be my focus, and a part of that is my own journey through my family. I'm the fourth oldest cousin, and I've seen every child brought into our family, and so I've always had an affinity, and people see that today, that some of young parents. I say that because I'm a little bit older than them at this point. Young parents, new babies, colicky, and they can't soothe because you don't get taught how to hold a baby, right? You learn, it's like OJT. You learn unless you've been around babies your whole life, and then I get to hold them, right? And I can remember back when I was 5 years old, when I knew kind of more consciously that I was older than my cousins, that the resistance is futile, kid. Like, there's no kid that's not going to soothe in my presence. And that's just been my journey. I found out later that my grandma was their village doula, and that her sister was the midwife, and she delivered like all the home births in Taiwan growing up. And so I didn't know that was also part of my kind of legacy. And that's fueled it, right? Because I think we know more than most in terms of like the prenatal pediatric focus. I believe it's the fastest and most popularized version or specialty in chiropractic at this stage. And I love it. I love it because you can, let's rewind 3 years to all the pandemonium, and we kind of had this gut feeling. Many of the prenatal and pediatric chiropractors, we had this gut feeling that what was happening was very similar to what we've seen in our practices, and that informed consent and all these different things that get violated in especially in California in public school and things like that. That was very front and center. So I was at county supervisors meetings speaking about the trends that were already happening. We know 1 in 6 kids has a learning challenge. We know that 1 in 4 kids require special education. We know that 1 in 10 has an anxiety disorder. We know all these statistics because we see them come into our practice and transform, but they weren't seeing what was potentially going to happen for the future. But then I would communicate also that nobody knows who comes through our practices, right? You guys have been in practice for how many years, right? Generations you've seen. You have children who are chiropractors, generations who we know what normal is. We know what normal physiology is. We know what the normal and complete cycle is. We know what normal birth is. And because of that, we know what's at stake. And so I've kind of had that feeling, and then I just wanted to figure it out. My first few years in practice, it was just like existential, like, holy cow, when you have a mom that comes to you for the first time, the first pregnancy, and you're kind of green behind the ears. I was, my mid-20s, single. I had a lot of learning. I had a lot of education. I had a great network of, the birth community that is San Diego behind me, but I didn't know what I didn't know. But you love and serve, and you give, from your level of expertise. And you just see these transformations, and you see these more empowered mothers, and you see the journey that they go on, and you can't ignore it, because that then leads to healthier kids that I wanted to know more and more and more about, not just about how we could help chronic stuff, but how we can help express optimal.
Yeah, and it also changes the direction of humanity. I mean, obviously,
just no big deal. No big deal. Small trajectory.
Side effects.
Yeah.
It's like it really is the future. And there's a study going on right now. I don't know if you know about this, but Lona Cook is a chiropractor in Wisconsin.
I know Lona. Yep.
It's got a great study happening right now where they're going into the public school system and they're adjusting kids she'll be speaking about it at the Wave. They're adjusting children, and then they're doing, pre and post stuff with them to see how their, how their skills are, how their learning sets are, how they're, I don't know I haven't dug into the deep project of it. She's going to bring it to me, but yeah. So, this stuff has taken off. My question to you is this: it's like, you came from a very educated standpoint, obviously, when you went to LACC, and then you kind of found your passion in chiropractic, right? As far as pediatrics and
of course,
and but you said vitalistic prenatal, and so where did that light get turned on? That vitalistic light, and I think that a lot of people, I know at Life West, I think our students take it for granted. Because they're just taught in a vitalistic world. It's kind of like our kids, growing up, Mary, we never had milk in the house, and we never did this, and we never had this, and, and they took it, they didn't take it for granted, but it was just how they were raised,
Yeah. I didn't know anything different.
Yeah.
Oh man. It started before I went to school, because my brother gave me a chiropractor's adjuster, Dee Dee's book, and I devoured it. Right. I started to read green books before I went to school. And so I had a ridiculous amount of pre-education that led me into going into a place like LACC, where it's almost like a black hole, right? Where I was student president 2 years, and I went into like the archives of the library because I knew they had it, because there were people on the administration telling me, hey, back in the day, we used to have debates here. Fred Bard's used to debate, I can't remember the researcher that hated BJ, who would always write about it. I can't remember him right now, but they would have these like radical debates on campus. And then, when I was going through school, people were barred and censored and not allowed on campus. Right. And so we, as like a student body, started to look deeper into, archives, and we found, and then we had them remove from those archives those, original texts for chiropractic, so people could read them, and so they could be exposed to them. And I don't know how many people actually took any, interest in it, but I believe it's the gift of going to a school like LACC, right? The gift of going to a school like LACC is it's a black hole for philosophy and vitalism that for some people drives a yearning, right, and this mission to figure it out. And
so you got some of it there, obviously. Whether you found it,
I did, yeah.
But is that what fueled it, or was that just like the kindling that? And then was there anything specific that lit the match? That kind of like just poof, or put the torch on the wood?
I would say, I would be remiss if I didn't honor Billy DeMoss. I would say Cal Jam, DCS, Dead Chiropractic Society. I went to DCS in my second trimester of chiropractic school, and Pat Gentempo taught the 33 principles. Synchronistically, the same week we were taught, air quotes, the 33 principles at our school. And I saw the contrast of what a beautiful depiction of what Stevenson wrote, which has that futurecast my entire journey into philosophy, but then also the opposite, where there was a lot of cynicism, there was a lot of doubt, there was a lot of like the way that our teacher taught philosophy to first year students. And that made me very, very clear that there was no question about how I was going to practice. And then to kind of convert that into a vitalistic pediatric practice. Every coach I've had has been to that vein. The ICPA and Jeannie Ohm, the late Jeannie Ohm, was one of my primary inspirers, so that I could actually just understand that, like you said, no big deal. It just changes the course of humanity. It does. If you are a student and you're listening to this, and because it's so hard to be a student, right? You're going through grad school. It's a terminal degree. It ain't easy. Boards aren't easy. Curriculum's not easy. All those things are not easy if you don't have a deep, deep reverence for the why behind what we do. And all of that, especially today, is deeply immersed in vitalistic chiropractic. It can't, there is no other answer for the future of humanity And I believe that to my core after seeing what's happened in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Well, and I got to give you props too, because you obviously, like, listening to you speak, we can feel your passion. Because it reminded me, like, we know a chiropractor who went to LACC, who came from a chiropractic family of very strong, vitalistic parents, who got sucked into the black hole. Like, I'm listening to you speak. You answered my question was, weren't you frustrated going through school? Because your answer was basically like, no, you just went searching for what you needed, but you already kind of had it.
Well, I would say that there was unending frustration, if I'm honest. Like, we had our class at school. I mean, I don't want to get into like too many of the details, but I would say it's both, right? It's a frustration that fuels purpose versus a frustration that fuels compromise, right? That makes you fold, right? We were on our administration's butts every day, just like no debates about shots in public health. I've been studying this for like 5 years. Like, you're going to tell me that I can't debate? I brought the debate because I knew that I knew that there was no way that I would lose. Yeah. And these tenured medical doctors on my campus telling us that we couldn't debate, I realized I was like, because they don't know. Like, they have no concept of what's actually out there. And so I would say we were infinitely frustrated, not just on the type of education we're getting, but also the type of education we weren't getting. Yeah. But we also fueled that into, like, how do we learn this thing? How do we find this thing? I was like, the reason why I was adopted into Life West by the adults and by the WCCS chapter back then. I don't know if you guys know Ankur Tayal and Michael Beebe and a lot of those year groups. They adopted us into your community because we were there every month for Carrick, every month for ICPA, and we would always come to school because that's just what you guys had as a culture. And I ate it up. Bookstore, I would have like 2 backpacks full of books every time. All these green books that I have are because I went to Life West, and my buddies would be like, dude, don't you have them all? I'm like, I couldn't buy enough. Like, I would buy more to give to other people because I wanted people to know, So it was definitely a frustration, and it just wasn't ever going to be something that I would let hinder my journey to understand this thing.
It sounds like it was a mission too, though,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you could have easily have transferred. You could have easily have moved up to Hayward, and I don't want to say easily because nothing's easy. Yep. But the option was there for you.
Yeah.
You chose to stay where you were, so you had to choose consciously to stay.
Many times.
And so but that creates a mission, right? That creates a purpose, right? And if you were being fueled, my sense is what I'm hearing, you were being fueled by this yin and yang, right? And by being inside of that, it just strengthened who you were and allowed you to be able to be around that, right? And I think it's a very admirable,
Thank you.
Very cool that because a lot of people act as the victim, oh yeah, I didn't get this and I didn't get that, and or they blame their path because of their college, or their education or the profession or whatever it is, my city, my town, my state, and the truth is like, look inside,
Most people will never understand that scarcity is one of the most detrimental viruses that infiltrate human minds. But what most people don't recognize is the inherent contradiction of scarcity and vitalistic chiropractic. Yeah. You can't live in scarcity and in cynicism and in pessimism and believe what we believe.
Yeah, it's diametrically opposed. And the interesting thing that I see is that the food that we feed our brain is much more important than the food we feed our body. And I think we need to feed good food to our bodies. But what we eat in our brain, what we're putting up here, the toxic, environment that we can create in our brains, and that's scarcity. That's and a lot of this people grow up with, and what vitalism allows them to do, and I'm not saying vitalistic chiropractic, just vitalism.
Yes, I agree.
Is to step out of that, is to understand that there's unlimited potential, understand that, I'm in hour and a half, I'll be speaking to our student body. We have a Friday seminar, which we're going to get you up to, but we have a Friday seminar. So I do the first one every week, and I never know what I'm going to really say. They put a PowerPoint together for me, a few things I ask them to throw up on there, but this might be the topic that comes in, because it really is. I mean, scarcity is not doesn't fit in the vitalistic model. It's amazing. So thank you for saying that, because it's
I know. Well, so I want to pivot just a little bit, because I know we're kind of getting to that.
Of course. Yep.
At the end. I'm going to call it maybe one of your passion projects, but can you talk to a little bit to the viewers about Heart of Freedom and
Sure.
why you started it? And I have a lot of questions about how you work this all into your practice.
Of course. So 3 years ago, we started the podcast, and we started the podcast because who knew what was going to happen, right? With all the things and all the lockdowns and all the crazy regulations. I have to say to you guys, I don't know what I would do as a president of a university or a college chiropractic school during the last 3 years, because of all the different ways that you're essentially just tied to the government and tied to school loans and all sorts of things. And so I say that with the deepest humility and respect.
Yeah, and I'll answer that for you.
Yeah.
You choose what hill you're willing to die on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really mean that.
No, I appreciate that.
Like I wasn't willing to die on a mask hill.
Yeah.
To me, that was, I take care of patients in a Richard Simmons, I'll date myself now, outfit here, but there are things that I am willing to die for, and
a mandated Richard Simmons outfit. You just gave me a terrible visual.
I know, what a
I wouldn't allow it.
But bottom line is, you choose. It's the same thing in practice, right? You choose the hill you're willing to die on, and that hill is the hill you're going to fight on forever, right? Forever and ever and ever.
But choose a hill, right?
Absolutely.
Choose a damn hill, because a ton of people didn't choose a hill, right? And so we decided back then that there was a message that was necessary to get out to the world, right? There's conversations that we have in our practices, behind our four walls, behind sometimes closed doors, that were almost front and center, in the commonplace population, where these mandates and these weird things, these restrictions, these things about germs and viruses versus terrain and the innate intelligence of the body, right? Then we chose our hill, right? And it was all of them. I chose that mask would be the hill. I chose that tests would be the hill. I chose that distancing, show me a social distance chiropractic adjustment. Show me, right? I'm sorry if you're practicing, which lockdowns were a hill. We didn't do it. We didn't play by any of the games. And we didn't because of my own journey, going to Iraq and being in a part of the world where you see what tyranny is, where you see what dictatorships are, right? This is not to say, was it justified, right, as a war, but this was to say that when we went through the country and these people were, quote, free, that they wouldn't leave their city. Just as one example of how stuck and how this tyrannical regime could actually control their people, is they wouldn't leave their city without permission, even though Saddam wasn't in power, right? So we would have lines of cars and people for blocks and miles coming to our checkpoints to ask for permission to leave their city and go to another city. Right. And they were asking for passes, which was the thing for me, right? Because we had these whole conversations on passports, right? That we would rip out of our notebooks, scribble on the page, nothing. Here's your pass. And they'd be like, thank you. Yeah. And they would go to another city. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that's my journey. And that fueled everything that I do. So what we did, Heart of Freedom specifically. So podcasts, we're 150 episodes through, because we're about 3 years old. We have 3 focuses: health freedom, which is one; natural living, especially birth and kids, and self-healing. Like self-healing practices, obviously, chiropractic being, front and center. The Heart of Freedom event became because we're in California, right? And Newsom came out with the curfew and then I spoke to Devin Verana, and Devin Verana was like just on the tail end of this amazing event that she had. And I said, how'd you do it? I interviewed her and Joey and I said, how'd you do it? And she's like, tap, you're it. And we had 6 weeks and we planned an event. We found a venue owned by some Russian dude who hates communism. And he's like, it's in Kearny Mesa, in your old neck of the wood, like in Kearny Mesa at an old TV station. And he's just like, so what are you guys going to do here? Cause we had the first one, we had Del Bigtree, we had Alex Zeck, Tommy John, Nurse Aaron, and then we had Melissa Floyd, right? We had some of the like really amazing speakers at that stage of everything. And he's like, so, the owner of the venue, he's like, so what are you guys going to do here? He's like, you guys going to talk about like Bill Gates? You guys going to talk about like, I was just like, whoa, dude, like, do you want to speak? Cause maybe more about this than we do. But it gave me like, whoa, I'm not alone here, right? Like there are people that are part of the population that are not only understanding what's going on, but they're willing to host us. Mm-hmm. And we were like, we're going to get a couple hundred people. We had 800 tickets sold.
Oh, great.
And we had 1,100 people show up.
Right.
And in the audience were people who should have been speaking, that are influencers in this kind of movement for human freedom. And that led us to do another event, I want to say 3 months later at Awaken Church, because the church had just been so active at, standing up for First Amendment rights. And then the third one we had in 2021, December, at Liberty Station. We had 2,000 people in Liberty Station. And we wanted to take it into the public because we were like, screw this. Like, this is ours. This is our territory. And it's not the hill to reclaim the land. We're reclaiming the territory. We're reclaiming San Diego. And so the movement for freedom in San Diego is very alive and well. And that's why my family chose not to leave. Like so many people leaving California, but this community is fueled and founded, in my opinion, by some of the best chiropractors in the world. You guys have a legacy of that here. And I felt very obligated, it felt like it was my duty to carry that torch that I believe you and many of the practices like you have inspired in our own county to carry that torch and wave the flag.
I love it, man.
That's great.
I love it.
And thank you for carrying the torch.
And the torch needs to be carried by many,
Yes.
Sometimes it gets lit by a few, right? Because it has to get lit, and then it starts branching off. We start lighting, other torches and other torches. And that's how we get strength. We get strength by many, not just a few. So
I love that.
Brother, we appreciate you. We've kind of hit our witching hour. We just appreciate all that you're doing and what you're doing for chiropractic. I know you roam the halls up here, and I know that you just love, it just comes out of you, man. It oozes out of you. So thank you for that. We always leave our guests on Life by Life West. We ask them 2 questions when we're at the very end. These have got to be innate responses, 15 to 30 seconds, that kind of thing. And we just want to kind of just tag into your heart and your brain for just 2 seconds. So, Mary, what you want to start first question?
I'll ask the first one. And first, I just want to say thank you for being one of our adopted
Thank you.
chiropractors.
Thank you.
We have many, but thank you for being so involved at the college. So, first question. So, knowing what you know now, okay, if you could go back and give yourself advice right when you're starting chiropractic college, if you could go back, what would you say to yourself? What advice would you give yourself?
I would say to myself, learn as much as you can about where chiropractic comes from.
Good.
Like the roots of not the fight and the polarization, but the soul and the depthness and the beauty, but also the conviction for chiropractic.
Love it. All right. Second question. Same thing. where Dr. Stan is right now, if you can go back and speak to the newly graduated Dr. Stan, just got your diploma, coming out, what advice would you give to that person?
I would say, if you have any inferiority complex, any at all, remember that on our very, very worst day, we are far safer than any medical provider. Any medical provider, especially those that do any pharma, we are far safer. But also remember that we are infinitely more effective at helping remove the cause, get to the root cause, but also create that transformative experience that I believe many of the greats like you guys have done for decades, right? And we have done for over 125 years. You have to iron in the fact that everything in the world today that has happened in the last 3 years, especially highlighted over the last 3 years, has been calling chiropractic to actually step into its potential and power.
Love it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Drop your mic.
Boom. We're out. We are out. So we are going to end. And Stan, thanks, man. Thanks for being with us. And
thank you, Ron. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate it. I am very, very honored to be here. I really am.
Well, we're honored to have you. And, it's just been great. And so thank you. And to our viewers, thank you. Thanks for being with us day and week in and week out. We drop these every other week. The opposite weeks, we drop the Life West Leadership Line. It's just taking off. There's been like a kind of a tsunami that's kind of been carrying this, and it's getting bigger because you're sharing it. So there's a lot of people, a lot of students. We're going to make sure our students hear this, but a lot of people just need to hear this message because it's not just about chiropractic. It's about life. It's about stepping out of that shell of life, that some people can be in and really kind of pull themselves out and see what the brighter horizon looks like. And so thanks for all that you're doing. And thanks for coming back week after week with guests like Stan, man. It's like, that was just so awesome. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
And everybody else, until we come back at you in another couple of weeks, just stay tuned for next week's Leadership Line, and just know that we love you and that you keep hugging those people around you, and let people know that they are far more powerful. Their healing ability far more powerful than they were ever led to believe. And until then, we'll bid you adieu, and we'll see you on the next Life by Life West.